Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is what culture engineers look for, and kind of trying to look at it from the other side of the coin. However, there's so many parallels and common parts about what Jim spoke about that I think you'll see that we're really saying the same things from a different point of view. So yeah, before makers, Ruben's already introduced me, so I'm just going to skip over that. So I'm going to dive straight into one of the things that Jim mentioned. He had like a tweet of it's not about ping pong and snacks. It's really about these three things that are talked about in the Drive book by Daniel Pink. And who's read this book? So it's very easy and available, but even if you don't want to read the book, there's like a 10-minute video that summarizes it really well. So I would just search video about Drive book and you'll just see a really great explanation of it. There are three things that he talks about, and I'm going to focus on two of them. But the three things are basically people need to understand what your mission is. And I think when people are looking for jobs, they want to understand what does your company do and why might I be interested in helping your company do that. So that's a really important thing to be clear. And that's certainly one of the reasons why I joined Makers. As soon as Evgeny explained, oh yes, Makers is all about helping people find jobs they love, I thought that's a really great mission, I want to be involved. But the other parts, and especially these are very important for software developers, are the opportunity to develop their mastery and having an amount of autonomy or choice in how they work. And those two things, as a coach, have been really what I've been focused on over, I guess, the last 10 years. How do you build a culture where those things are really important and recognized? And people, as Jim said, it's kind of, they need to radiate out from everything that you do. So I'll talk a little bit, and I'm going to use some photographs from Unruly where I was working before, just because it's nice to see real developers doing things. So I always like that. So at the start, I'm going to talk about a growth culture. So a growth culture is something where people feel, a developer coming, an engineer coming to look at your organization, they're weighing you up and they're thinking, how will I grow? How will I improve? What are you going to give me that will help me on my career? And in order to, I mean, it's easy to kind of go, well, here are these tick boxes. You get a conference allowance and, various kind of, you'll have a mentor. But how do you make sure that learning and growing is, throughout everything that you do? And I think an important thing, so I've kind of got a picture of seedlings. Obviously, developers are not seedlings, but people need space to grow, and they need time to grow. And actually factoring time in to the work week for learning and making sure that that's something people are expected to do in their work time, not just in their spare time or over their lunch time. That's really important. That's an important indicator. We value learning so much that we want you to do it when we're paying you, not just while you're trying to eat your lunch and stopping you going to the bank or whatever other errands you might be wanting to do at lunchtime. So, things that you can do that can help indicate we value sharing knowledge. So in many organizations, people practice pair programming, and this is a great way for people within your team to learn from each other. So here's a photograph from Unruly of two developers who are pairing and another two who are pairing behind them. And in that organization, pairing was something that people were doing all the time, and they were also doing mob programming. But it gives an important message that you value pair programming, because what you're really saying is, we value the opinions of the other people in your team. And actually, to the point of somebody who asked a question about what do you do about disagreement, you deal with disagreement early when you're pair programming. People share opinions and try to resolve them quickly before they get too vested in different positions. Coding dojos are a great way for developers to actually share their experience, and what you'll find is that engineers really like to show all the cool stuff that they know and demonstrate this to their peers. So where I was working, we were doing coding dojos, but the coding dojos were not to teach test-driven development practice or things like that. They were actually about, here's a new language that I've been trying, let's all try this new language. And they weren't necessarily relevant to languages we were using on our current products. But the opportunity to learn together draws people in. So we had, and I think they still have, like a Haskell club going, you know, and that company's never going to write Haskell for any of its products. But it's a really good environment for learning functional programming. So the way to keep these going from an engineering point of view is to make sure that the engineers are leading them, and then actually that's something that demonstrates their autonomy. They're choosing the topics, they're choosing the speakers, they're organising it. It's something for them, but it's done in a time when the company, it's not done over their lunchtime, it's done actually. I mean, we were very often doing it kind of bookending lunchtime, but it's still done as part of the working week. And mentoring. So it's really important that, especially for junior developers joining an organisation, they have some network of support, some way that they can reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And also, more senior developers really value the opportunity to grow their skills by developing mentoring skills. So what you'll find is senior talent are interested in becoming mentors, and more junior people need the support of mentors. So the mentorship program and the idea of having a mentorship program can be a big attraction for more junior people, but it also is an attraction for senior people who see themselves as senior enough to mentor people. There are many, many different sources of learning in the organisation, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but basically, when you are thinking about your organisation, you may be in a different context. It may be that pair programming is not appropriate for you, or it may be that lunchtime dojos are difficult to organise, but there are different areas where you can find opportunities for your engineers to learn. And I'm just going to name a few of them, just so you to consider some of them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about a few of them too. So one very important thing is you've got other teams in your organisation. Often you've not just got one team, you've got several teams. So you can learn from rotating people through those teams, helping people to get exposed to what the other teams are doing. And we actually, in this organisation, had the chance that, you know, when you were hired, you wouldn't just get stuck in one team. You would actually, so if you started off as a front-end developer, you could perhaps move to become a back-end developer through a process of rotation and learning. So when people are looking at your company thinking, why should I join as an engineer? Talking to them about the opportunities for them to learn different skills by learning different environments. Developers are often very wary of getting stuck in one technology. They're always looking for, you know, what's the next technology, when will I get to use it, and how can I expand my skill set? So moving around through pairing and rotation can be a great thing to do. There's always the classic things, and as kind of Jim referred to, you know, you've got books and videos, and just making sure that the company supports paying for books and those kinds of things can be helpful, but for engineers that's more like a tick box thing. So it's more that you're thinking, what sets our company apart from, you know, we go to an extra level to invest in your learning, and so think about those kinds of things. How can you share how much your culture is a learning culture by talking about the additional things you do beyond, you know, like, yeah, you've got a conference budget and you've got books. So the other thing that you can, an area that we found was very attractive to many developers is the opportunity to be involved directly with the customers, shaping the features and getting into the business problems. If you're joining a company where you're inspired by the mission of the company, then it's great to get some involvement so that you can actually shape the direction of those features. So I'm going to dive a little bit more into some of the things on there. So one thing that we did, as well as coding dojos, was we started to have lightning talks, but they were also in work time. This is something that's quite common across companies in London, is having a regular lightning talk slot so that your developers can share what they've learned about. We're also using it for people who had been out to conferences and spent their conference allowance, for them to talk about, well, so I went to this really cool conference, what did I learn from it? And to make sure that everybody else was aware of what was interesting, what were the current trends that were being picked up in the conference, and also potentially, would I want to spend my conference allowance on going to that conference next year? So having lightning talks or tech talks as part of your work week can be a useful thing to do. The other thing, and some you can even make those open, and I'm not sure if 8th Light do this, but you can make this open to other companies. So I know there's a company down the road, Tim Group, they have lightning talks every Thursday, but they also say, oh yeah, you can come along even though if you don't work for that company. Meetups, sorry, I forgot to indicate, this is a developer, and you can see that he's talking about JavaScript, because there's lots of brackets and on the screen. And he's very passionate about JavaScript, and he's somebody who was very shy about presenting. And often one of the things that can really help developers to grow is to feel they have this opportunity to share their passion. So what they really care about is something that there is space for and time for in the work week, and that their colleagues can hear what they're interested in, and then that draws the people with the similar interests more together. So it starts forming, like interest communities within the company. We also had a meetup, and this is a slouched audience of sleepy developers, but they have actually been talking just and then just sat down for a talk. However, I'm not just talking, you don't have to host a meetup, but it's actually really important to encourage people to feel like going to meetups is okay, and maybe even if they are thinking, well, I'm going to this meetup this evening, maybe then tomorrow it's okay if I come in a little bit later. But respect the fact that going to meetups is actually part of a developer's career journey, and that you as an employer want to support that and are interested in it. And so both encouraging people to go to meetups and kind of bearing in mind they have been to them, and then ideally getting them to do technical talks about what they heard. These are great ways to kind of get out there and get your company known about, but also for your engineers to bring new ideas into your company. And for engineers that are looking at your company, if they see that you've got engineers going around speaking at other events, that's kind of an indicator. Oh yeah, they are a company that's serious about technology, because very much, people engineers are looking to think, but do you really care about how you're doing this? Do you care about what's happening, advancements in the industry? They want to feel that they're joining a more cutting edge company than, like, oh yes, we just do this old version of JavaScript or something like this. So, and then another thing that I was very much involved in, but I know that engineers really appreciate, it's not just the opportunity to go to conferences, which is great, and the Unruly did have conference allowance, and also the making sure that people's expenses were covered if they were speaking at conferences, but having some sort of mentorship, coaching around helping people become speakers and get confident enough to speak. So this is Alex, and you can see by his baby face that he's kind of was quite junior at the time, and he's speaking at Java 1, which is one of the big industry conferences, and he got there through coaching support from me and also through getting an opportunity to practice his skills at our internal tech talks, building up confidence in doing that. But it did also require a lot of practice time, in work time, where he needed to kind of work on his talk. And again, if your company supports this as part of the job and not like, oh, in your spare time you can also work a lot on the slides, then it kind of radiates that your culture is a culture that values learning, and that people who value learning would be good to join your culture, and that when you're in an environment where you value learning, this creates serious developers who care about quality and are able to innovate and try new ideas, and they have much more confidence. If you think about it, it's a core skill of a software developer to be able to stand up and speak to people. You have to do it in group settings with teams. You have to explain architectures. You have to explain proposals about what your project is and what technology options you're choosing. And this is a very useful skill to invest in developer communication skills. So I just encourage you to not only do it, but also let people know that you do care about it when you're hiring them. So I'm kind of getting towards the end of what I wanted to say. I wanted to include this picture because I know it's a picture of people wearing silly hats, but it is also radiating parts about our learning culture in that team. So this is Tom, and Tom has just been doing, he's just graduating from what we would call Tech Academy. Now, Tom is actually a very senior Java developer, very, very skilled, and most companies would think, okay, we're hiring that person, he doesn't have anything to learn. But in our organization, or in this organization that I'm talking about, what we were doing was we were making sure that everybody went through, or whether you were junior or senior, went through a series of sessions led by other developers in the team to explain things like how our infrastructure worked, how our front-end development worked, and then a rotation where each developer would spend a week in each of the other teams. And only on completion of that would you then get a nice certificate. But these certificates that they got, we put an extra investment in. They had a nice design, they were in a glass frame, you could take them home, and actually people were very proud and had their certificates around the office because they were not just a piece of paper or something emailed to you, they were actually presented, and they were presented in a session where everybody was involved. So again, this kind of fostering of learning is key to people feeling happy about their job. And then when they're involved, so when Tom is involved then in interviewing prospective developers, he will then, be gushing about how great it is to work at that company. And that's the other thing is, your developers are the best adverts for your culture. So it's really important that they feel happy about how they're working and the investment in them, because then they'll start telling their friends, they'll be at some event and they'll say, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying working at my new job because we've been doing this or we've been doing that. And so that's a really important thing, is to, at the end of the day, your engineers advertise your engineering culture, and other engineers want to come and work there because they recognize that enthusiasm, it comes through from people. So that's all I had to say. So thanks. And